Welcome to Between Two Pastries, a not-so-typical nutrition podcast. Nicole and Annie are licensed and registered dietitians. Join them as they discuss hot nutrition topics, challenge popular beliefs, and have a blast doing it. Here are your hosts, Nicole and Annie.
Hi.
Welcome to Between Two Pastries. We are not happy. This is Nicole.
Yeah, no, not happy, Annie. Never happy. I should probably, everyone knows that though. Nicole really revs me up to be in a very cynical mood and then hits the record button.
Literally, because I'm like, okay, forget it. We're done bitching about all of this. Let's just press record and whatever.
We do. We prep before we start, and what we prepped today was like I'm starting to sweat. My cheeks are really red.
I know. So we had a Patreon member reach out to us, and bless his heart, Dan, thanks so much for the support, by the way. He's like, hey, I came across this particular article, and of course it was on intermittent fasting, and it was on 4-hour intervals of eating versus 6-hour intervals of eating. Essentially, the fasting component based off of the very few individuals that they actually had on the study. The study was almost not worth putting money in, is definitely something I wanted to say.
Can I just throw this out there, because we hear about intermittent fasting as 14-hour, 16-hour, 18-hour, 24, 48-hour fast. What this study, they're basically like reversing the phrasing. Mm-hmm. So it's just to enlighten people, this is basically taking the same fasting intervals that are already out there and flipping them to say 4-hour eating, 6-hour eating intervals.
Right.
So be mindful of that. So if I'm eating for 4 hours, I'm fasting for 20. If I'm eating for 6 hours, I'm fasting for 18. So again, they're just giving it a different name. And I just want to, and instead of looking at the science behind or researching the fasting part, now we're looking at the interval of eating.
Yes. So just throwing this out there, so I really hope he's listening. There were a lot of faulty things around this. And it was very interesting because the wording of it was also fascinating too. It was like, oh, here we had great result. And then as the result went, as the article went on, it was like, and here's what didn't work, here's what didn't work, here's what didn't work, right? Or they got into more of the details of like, yep, there was weight loss, but weight loss primarily came from muscle. No kidding. We know this already. A fraction of it came from fat. And then as the study continued with versus the 6-hour one versus the 4-hour one, it started to just dwindle. And that's what happens because metabolism starts shifting, your body starts going into a different way of operating, and it will probably inhibit you from actually losing body fat, because that's how our body is set up. Our body is set up for survival, period. So you are putting it in a famine. It doesn't like famines. It's going to go ahead and reverse that at some point, which is also why if someone's doing this for whatever reason they feel they need to, this is not something to do long term. However, if you do this for a while and then you decide, I really hate this schedule because I have a real life, and they start doing their real life, they're going to have a really big setback, because of some of these parameters that did get shifted during the starvation period. And I know that people who really, really love this concept hate when people talk about it being starvation, but it is.
Period. It's starvation, period.
I mean, you have to call a spade a spade.
Correct. There is no other way. No, it is starvation. People who do not eat are starving themselves. People who can't afford to eat and therefore don't have access to food, they are starving themselves.
Yeah.
Whether or not they want to or not. People who choose to intermittent fast and have plentiful food in front of them are starving themselves. And
Right.
what I want to tackle a little bit more than just what's in that study is Nicole mentioned whether you're doing it, okay, we're doing it long term. And I want to bring up if you're doing it short term. What's the physiological damage that you're doing? Nicole already mentioned one, loss of muscle. Nicole, what I'll say is there's a lot of people who could give two shits about that. Unfortunately.
That is a shame because that fuels everything that a person wants fueling. So when you take that away, you are just damaging everything.
Correct. The more muscle fibers, I'm not going to say muscle mass because I don't want people to think like, well, if I'm big and bulky, no, we're toned. No, if we have a great deal of muscle fibers, we metabolically are going to function faster. That's something you want, right? You're going to have better outcomes with your bones. You're going to have better outcomes with immunity, all of these things, your endocrine system, all of these things. You want to keep your muscle mass that you have. You don't want to start a starvation diet or any diet and lose your muscle. Okay. It can happen. Yes, we know that, but that's why you work with someone and figure out, the right plan. Number two, whether it's short-term or long-term, it will have detrimental effects on your blood sugars. So you want to do this for a day or 3 days, you are going to futz with your blood sugars. When you futz with your blood sugars, you futz with your pancreas. When you futz with your pancreas, you futz with your liver. When you futz with your liver, you futz with your kidneys, and they all connect and they all give you the big middle finger at the end of the day. If this continues long term, then that's when you start seeing things like diabetes and renal failure. Your liver takes over for everything that's not working, almost everything within the body. You won't see liver issues typically with a lot of different things outside of alcoholism, right? Like it takes a little bit for the liver to go. It's your pancreas and your kidneys with intermittent fasting that really get the brunt of it. And I would argue even the pancreas more than anything.
Yeah.
And certainly the gallbladder too, because imagine in 4 hours or 6-hour eating intervals, the amount of fat that you may consume, what's going to happen to your gallbladder at that point? Right. So again, why, again, I want to figure what is the point of people doing this? And I've heard things. Yep. People think they're doing it for weight loss. Okay. That's usually the first one. I've heard people, oh, well, I noticed better outcomes with my skin, my hair, stuff like that, physical things. Here's what I'll say about that. Yes, when you don't have vitamins and minerals, yes, initially things might appear different. Your skin may not break out, right? Because you're not eating. There is no oil. There is nothing. Eventually you will start seeing cracked lips. You'll start seeing hair falling out in the shower more and more. You'll start seeing, paler skin tone, all of those types of things. It takes time. It's not initial, but the more we do this stuff, the more, malnourished characteristics we're going to start to have, whether or not, and that doesn't mean you can't function. I work with plenty of severely malnourished people who can function every day. Same with alcoholics. They can function every day, no problem. That doesn't mean what you're doing is right or creating longevity. Like we talk about the blue zones.
Oh my gosh.
You want to know the number one way to just dump your longevity into the biggest cesspool ever?
Right.
Do these diets.
So freaking frustrating.
I have not found, and again, you probably read more individual studies than I do. I prefer to look more at systemic reviews of research. It's to me, that's easier to read, but I have not come across anything that says, yes, this is something that is a very viable choice physiologically, physically, emotionally, mentally, long-term, short-term, or anything like that.
Well, and I think the whole, the whole thing, about this too, is that this is not for everybody. And the thing is that this isn't even long-term. Like,
who's it for, Nicole? Then who's it for? Because everyone thinks they're the special egg.
Here's the deal. It's, and if I can just be super, super freaking blunt here, it's not for anybody. The thing is that we cannot continue to look for crappy diets and put all of our power into that because we're powerless against our own behaviors. We have got to start taking care and taking responsibility for our own behavior or lack thereof, or crappy relationship with self and food. Period. You cannot out diet a binging eating disorder. You cannot out diet a restrictive eating disorder. You cannot out diet night eating. You cannot out diet drinking too much wine. You cannot out diet or out exercise your shitty behaviors that you're struggling to target.
Correct.
That was really blunt.
Yeah, no, I loved it. That was great.
No.
That was good. You're making strides, Nicole. I like it. Well, you're moving in the right direction.
I know, but then I'm gonna go, and I love everybody and everybody, because I do. But I think what the bottom line is that these systems are created to attract the people who are really struggling.
Yes.
To make some serious change, and they're continuously told lies. And this is what I'm trying to say, and continuously told lies of how they're going to cure all of the things. And I think that's where all of this stuff just gets me. I just get so sad, because that's what's going to continue people being sick. And I don't even mean sick on a physical level. I really mean sick on a mental level. And yes, is it hard work to look at our behaviors? Is it hard work to adjust our lifestyle? Is it hard work? Yeah, it really can be. And there's so much freedom in finally getting to the other side of an addiction, getting to the other side of a maladaptive coping skill. There's so much freedom in that. And it would save a hell of a lot of time if we just started there to begin with.
I want to remind people, if a diet is not used in a hospital, do not do it. It is not a viable diet then. For example, cardiac disease, we follow the cardiac diet. And there's aspects of that Nicole and I would apply to certain people pending cholesterol, blood pressure, activity, cardiac function, etc. If someone has epilepsy, we would work with them on a very short-term ketogenic diet. And I don't know, Nicole, I don't feel qualified to do, it's an extremely challenging diet to manage. And it has nothing to do with the ketogenic diet that people follow outside of healthcare.
Yeah, because
they're two different things.
That's diet culture. That isn't actually real keto at all.
Correct. A low carbohydrate diet or diabetic diet. Those are meant for a certain population of people and prescribed in a hospital. There is not a hospital that I'm familiar with where IF of any sort is prescribed. Keep that in mind. If it is not a medical diet, it's not actually something that probably should be followed by anyone, and was created as a marketing ploy to get you to spend money, or in this case, not spend money and buy a book or t-shirt or whatever. The other thing I'll mention too, and Nicole touched on this slightly in her rant, was, we don't want to deal with our problems. We don't want to deal with our behaviors. Okay. We don't want to deal with actually fixing the brain issues that we have going on, or potential trauma, or, whatever. The other thing that people need to start realizing is that the aging process happens to all of us. Within the aging process comes changes to our activity, changes to our body, changes to our health, changes to our taste, all of these things. Metabolism. And we have to be okay with this. We have to be okay with these changes and adjust with our body and stop trying to battle against it to be someone that we are not anymore. And those are the two things that I think, again, we see this happen because we're in the spots that we're in as dietitians. People get upset with themselves for all or nothing behavior or black and white thinking, different cognitive distortions related to food and body. So they come to us, or eventually. First, they start doing this diet and then it fails. And then they do this diet and then it fails. And then this one. And maybe they have some success for a year or two doing different things, but they just keep bouncing back and forth and back and forth. They hit age 40 or 50 and we're seeing different changes to our bodies. And eventually they come to us and they want to continue doing different diets instead of listening to the fact that all of these things are going on and you have to tackle them one by one, especially when it relates to behavior. And I'll say it again. I've said it before. Everyone's got really shitty maladaptive coping skills for when it comes to their bodies and eating. They don't want to deal with the actual problems that exist. They want to eat or drink the whatever when they want it and feel some initial relief. Let's talk about what's actually going on. Why don't you actually like your family, stuff like, let's talk about these things because it's translating into how we're eating. It's translating in all these wacky diets. It's translating into our body and our thoughts about ourselves and a lot of distortions. And again, I'll say it again. People don't they're like, that's not me. People don't think it's most people, like 99% of our population.
Right.
Has this happening and they don't want to deal with it. They would rather do something that says, well, if you eat for 4 hours out of the day, this or this might happen. Why would you do that to yourself? Why would you do that to your family? What a terrible way to go through life living in a first world country.
Yeah, no, it's an excellent point. Well, and that's what I'm saying. Like, this is just so not reality in general. So, getting back to like what Dan was even asking, and I don't, this particular study was strictly done on women in particular. And they primarily targeted pre-menopausal women of a particular shape. And they did, and that shape does have a higher insulin resistant, higher blood sugar level, higher cholesterol. Typically that particular body shape is going to have these markers that they were essentially kind of looking at in general. Something that I really, 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 really want to make super clear here is in this particular study, some of these women only ended up fasting for 10 hours and some fasted as long as 19. So they all did not actually do it in the way that was specifically documented.
All right. How were they allowed to remain in the study then?
The study was horribly done.
Okay.
And it was literally like 20
like
people.
That's usually grounds for you're not a part of the study anymore.
That's correct. And again, this study
skews your results.
Right. I think that there were like 20 people that ended up being in the study. So it's a very, very poorly done study. That's what I'm saying. I don't even know why they even spent money on this.
The kids in my food chemistry class that I have doing full experiments for are using bigger sample sizes than that.
Yeah. So, one of the big markers that, IF always says is that it decreases insulin. It decreases insulin. It decreases insulin. I think what's really important, and it's just, it's like all it is now just a trendy word, for people, but no one has any relationship to it. They have no idea really what that really, really means. But Annie and I have said this time and time again, that normal fasting is when you're done with dinner until you eat breakfast. And that is just naturally going to be for anybody, depending on a lifestyle, without even thinking about it, 10 to 14 hours. I mean, these are just natural things. These aren't even things that you have to work to make happen. Like, it's just natural.
Well, and let's put it into perspective too. Let's say 3 meals a day. We'll just go on the high side. And 3 meals a day, maybe a couple snacks. Your eating intervals total is probably 3 to 4 hours. As we eat throughout the day, which there has been extensive studies done on eating meals and snacks.
On normal eating?
Right. That, when you wake up, we have breakfast. There's a period of time between breakfast and lunch, sometimes a snack. Again, eating, 3 to 6 times a day, that will actually vary on the person for sure. Meal sizing, lifestyle, stuff like that. But when we eat 3 to 6 times a day, the outcomes are amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Of those 3 to 6 times, whether it's you are on the low side with three meals, or 3 to 6, you've got some snacks in there, maybe dessert at night, you are only eating about 3 to 4 hours total out of the day. How long does it take to eat a meal? You know what I mean? And a snack.
Oh, sure. I know what
do you see what I'm saying?
I know what you're trying to say.
Yeah. So now what you're going to do instead
spread out, but yes,
is binge for 4 hours.
Well, but that's essentially what it comes down to.
And anyone that I've worked with, that's what they say they're doing.
Well, because
they're starving.
It's distorted.
Correct.
People run with, all right, I have to get everything in.
Correct.
In this period of time. And again, there were worse health outcomes with the 4-hour period than there were with the 6.
Yes.
Because it's too overwhelming on a body to consume all the things.
On the pancreas.
Correct. And many other things, quite honestly.
Yes.
And the one thing too, is that obviously with that 4-hour window, people lost way more muscle, which they will.
Correct.
And on the 4 and the 6, essentially there was a calorie reduction because people cannot cram everything that they need in a day in those hours. So,
I bet you if I did it under the same circumstance, I would eat more calorically in a 4-hour period than if I spaced it out and had meals.
You think so?
I bet I would, because again, you think about personalities who do this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The personality types. A lot of people are going to try to get everything in that they possibly can get in because they know they're not going to be able to eat.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's usually 2 meals and a few snacks. Again, maybe not binging in the sense of loss of control and how you'd see it as an eating disorder. When I say, I mean, it's just consistently eating for those 4 hours. It's not like someone is just having a meal in that time frame and listening to hunger and fullness cues. Clearly,
that's the whole thing. And isn't that the whole thing, Annie? So now we're just going to ignore how our body wants to operate anyway, because we're, again, believing something outside of ourselves. And it's another way of control. If I can just binge in this period of time and then not think about it for so long, it's totally going to work. What, until you binge again?
Right.
It's just, again,
well, maybe let's just take 2 minutes to talk about hunger and fullness cues. Nicole alluded to it earlier with drops in insulin. Hunger and fullness and insulin and glucagon are all related, right? I don't know if you want, hormones play a role in this. And when
they're
you start
literally all related. Yes.
Yeah. When you start to futz again with your pancreas, when you do this, you are causing a lot of damage with that gut brain discussion that's going on within your body. I don't know if you want to just do a little bit on insulin and glucagon at all, but
I don't.
Okay.
No,
well, they play a role, just so everyone knows. That's fine.
I'm not spending any more time on this topic than I honestly need to.
Nicole's had it. That's amazing. Just so everyone knows, the appetite sensations that you feel at whatever intervals, you got to listen to those.
Period.
Got to listen to. They will evaporate at some point. And when they evaporate, you're really fucking things up.
That's exactly the point that I was going to make when you asked me to define some of those things.
You're malnourished at that point, usually.
Correct. That messes up all of the things. It also creates another hormonal imbalance that is designed to hoard and conserve your intake.
Thus, metabolism slows.
All our bodies are designed to do is survive. And it doesn't matter what you are doing to it. It will look for any opportunity to maintain homeostasis.
Correct. Don't futz with your hormones. And this is the one diet that I think really, really does the biggest number on our hormones and our electrolytes.
I think the thing is it most definitely can. And especially if you know, if when people get really fed up with it, and then that's the other thing. Like whenever you go off of something, you're in a totally rebellious mood and you're like, you know, I'm going to eat whatever the F I want, whenever I want, you know, the people just start getting into this crazy thing. Again, it becomes more about like, it becomes more about like power and choice than it becomes about like
discipline.
Am I taking care of myself? I mean,
but who cares if I want to look a certain way?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. But yeah. Anyway,
I take care of myself as long as I look good and people are telling me I look good. Who cares if I'm extending my life or helping my heart or making sure I have both my kidneys by age 50? Like, who cares?
I know, it's ridiculous.
I think that's the outlook ultimately.
So getting back to what, you know, Dan was asking for, and Dan, forgive us for blasting
probably
this
like,
one
I'm never listening
out of the water. The study was not well done. There were not a lot of people, like they said, they even admitted that this wasn't well done, that there were lots of other things that they needed to be looking at that they weren't. There were just a lot of things around this particular study in general. One of Dan's questions too, we've talked about this in the past, and I might put something in the notes as reference to it. In fact, Christy Harrison kind of actually did a really, really nice blog post, I think, on how to be able to identify a really good study. And if I can find what she already did, I'm going to stick it in our notes as well as reference.
Because that magazine.
Yeah, that will at least answer, you know, Dan's question a lot more in detail. Yeah, you know, typically you want a lot of people in the study, and you also want a lot of different kinds of people, ages, you know, men, women. You know, you want to be looking at a very big spectrum.
Sure. But again, I mean, there are really great studies that do isolate gender or age.
Oh, sure, again, of course. Yes, of course.
You know what I mean? But again, with stuff related to food.
With anything that relates to putting everybody in one bucket.
Correct.
If they're going to claim that, then they got to put everybody in one bucket and really prove that that bucket does the job.
Correct.
Yep. And they're not looking at long term. They're looking at 8 weeks.
I was just going to say the length of the study matters, especially when you're looking at food and bucketing people. That better be a sure as shit long ass study that's going on.
Like the NIH.
Like years.
You know, like we're talking about like a 10-year, 15-year,
correct,
you know, study. And we don't have that information. We just don't.
No.
And all of this that's coming out on this anyway, and the studies that are done, they're all boiling down to, you guys don't need to do this to have the same freaking outcomes. If we can just eat normal and just be consistent with that.
And have an understanding that there are people in the world that are going to die from things that just happen.
Right.
Cancer, pancreatitis,
right.
Cardiac disease. Like sometimes this stuff is just happening.
Right.
And we might not be able to prevent it.
Yeah.
And it's okay. We have to start being okay with life.
Mm-hmm.
As life is going to go,
and
stop trying to manipulate and change things, like forcibly change things that probably are making things worse. And change is a good thing, but again, let's think about these things before we do them. Before our only concern is our physical being. The other thing too I'll say about studies is who does them really matters.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So if you see a study being done on, you know, how great the nutritional value of beef is, and the Beef Federation is funding the study.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So, and it same goes, how great veganism is, let's say, and PETA is funding the study. Those are not good studies. Okay. Yeah. So unfortunately you have that plays a role in there too, is who's paying for this study, where is the study being conducted, and by whom, and what are those researchers' bias that currently exists.
The day and age of the internet now, I'm also seeing like a lot of things that look like a study that are actually complete BS, and they're actually more of an advertisement for something.
Yep.
Because again, we're falling into not being fully educated on what really makes for a decent study.
It's easy to read. It's probably not a real study.
Yeah. As you all know, you can all find any research out there to support any belief you have. And to your point too, Annie, when you were talking about kind of the whole like systematic overviews, right? Mm-hmm. Where, you know, I like those too. I feel like those are way more comprehensive because they're taking a ton of similar studies and they're boiling it down to here is the average of the result of this styling of whatever it is they're studying.
Right.
And those are probably a better way of looking at it. But we still have to remember that we are each still individual people and that we're all, you know, even though we have similar physiologies, we're all unique in a little bit of a way. So we still are not falling into one bucket.
Nicole and I are not in the same bucket. Everyone is in their own little bucket. Again, we're not robots.
Right.
We're all individuals. It's frustrating. And hopefully we delivered some good information and not just bitchy information. But
we got really ramped up there, and you know, it's like, you know, there's a part of me that wants to apologize for it. And there's a part of me that just doesn't, because it's just sort of like, oh my gosh, you know, it's exhausting. It's just exhausting all the time.
It makes me really sad. Yeah. It makes me really sad that people feel like they're not okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I get it. You want to have good health outcomes. But again, I'll add, what makes you think that doing this is going to create a positive health outcome?
Mm-hmm. Well, because you've been told that, because somebody told you that.
But like, use your brain. Let's critically think about this. What makes you think that this is the way to go? I'll say this too. If there's you want to do this, or you want to do whatever diet, or you want to not listen to anything we say, do it. See how it works for you.
Well, and the thing is, do it, but then don't stop doing it. Like whatever you're going to do, though, you've got to maintain doing it, because your body is literally changing to adapt to what you're doing. So then when you don't do that anymore, and your body goes freaking nuts.
Right. You've changed your microbiome in your gut. You've changed your hormones. You've changed how your enzymes function. You've changed how your organs function.
And that's why when people jump from thing to thing to thing to thing, I mean, your poor body can never truly regulate. And this causes stress.
But not stress in the way that people understand it. It's internal physiological stress.
Internal cellular stress. And I'll go ahead and throw definitions for insulin and glucagon and yada, yada, yada.
Thanks.
Fine. Just don't make me do that now. It's like my brain is so angry. It's like, I can't even.
I talk about insulin and glucagon way too much. And
oh my gosh.
You know what I mean? That I'm good not talking about it here. I leave you to the hormone thing.
That's fine. I know.
I do think it was good. I mean, sure, we've got to approach this stuff, and that's fine, and talk about it.
And we do. We don't mind people making us angry, because then we get to talk about it and hopefully shed light on why it might make us angry, you know, and something different around it. But
it's not it doesn't make me angry that people are curious about this stuff.
Oh, no.
Again, it's not even anger. Again, there's a level of sadness that exists. Yeah. Why can't we be okay with being different from each other? Or why do we have to continue to pass judgment on each other?
Right.
Everyone's in a different stage of life. Everyone's at a different age. Everyone's at a different everything.
I know.
Judgment needs to stop.
All right. Well, thanks to this Patreon member so much. We hope you're satisfied.
I don't know, Nicole. This could get an email.
I know. It probably will.
Okay.
But we'll try to give more information here in the notes, just because we're both a bit sassy right now. So thanks for listening. Bye.
Yes. Bye.
Have questions you want to hear discussed on the show? Find us on Facebook or visit betweentwopastries.com and drop us a line. Want to support the show? Find us on Patreon for exclusive content. If you love the show, find us on iTunes or your favorite podcast platform. Hit the subscribe button and leave us a review.